Hello, awesome people. I hope you're having a great day today. Today, we're taking a look at the next short story in this Unreal and the Real collection of more than 700 pages long and 39 short stories by a classic author named Ursula K, LeGuin, who has 9 Hugo Awards, and she's heavily influential in fantasy and in science fiction too. So we'll be taking a look at this next short story in this collection. It's a science fiction short story. It's 32 pages long, called 9 Lives, and I read it last night. We've been doing a deep dive into this collection after I picked up this collection to read an 8-page short story called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, which I was told was copied heavily in a video by Strange New Worlds on Paramount Plus in the Star Trek universe. So I said, let's check it out and read it, because I saw some reviews and I was like, I've never read it, so I've never heard of it. So I picked this up, and then I was like, well, we have it, well, we might as well go ahead and do a deep dive into it. So we've been doing an unpacking of this collection ever since for you folks. So let's take a look at this short story, 9 Lives, the 32-page short story that I read last night in about 57 minutes. So let's take a look at it, what I thought about it. So I knocked it out. I thought it was fun. So what's basically happening, and as a reminder, I keep my reviews spoiler free, so we'll only give you like a deep dive into like the first 4 or 5 pages of a 32-page short story. But here's what's happening. We are set in a future that has colonies. There have been several major famines that have really reduced Earth's population over the last few years. And so we have these 2 people that are working in the far out areas in the regions of space in the solar system, and they are mining and finding places, and they've just found a mine and so forth that they're now working with. So they meet up with a set of clones, 10 clones, and then they have each of them have of the same person, and there are 5 women and 5 men in the clone group. And so they reach out to them, and then 12 of them are going to head out to this planet that they found and start mining it for uranium. And that's about 4 or 5 pages into the 32-page short story, so I'll go ahead and leave it to you here. But what happens with the mining, what winds up happening with the things, and so forth. There's a lot of conversation about the nature of cloning and so forth, the nature of life, those sorts of things. So that's fun. So definitely has some nice conversations and some nice world building to it too. The ending was okay. I didn't think it was amazing or anything like that. And it was well written. You know, Ursula K. LeGuin 8 Hugo Awards obviously will be a well written sort of thing, right? But it didn't have this, this great sort of a science fiction feel to it. It didn't have these sort of existential angst to the first 2 short stories that we reviewed that were in the sci-fi genre. The previous one was just materialism was bad, and so it didn't have that sort of thing either. This one's less. It's sort of in between the 2. You have to sort of really sort of read between the lines in order to get to the deeper stuff. But it's so it's there-ish if you want to find it. But it's not really something that I think it leads well with. But there you are. I'll go ahead and leave it to that's 9 Lives. Have you read it? If so, what did you think about it? Let's talk about it in the comments below. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. So let's talk about that in the comments below. You can also talk about the spoilers or the ending and so forth too. As a reminder, this channel's name is The Worst Thing About New Books. A quote by a French philosopher, Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about new books was that they kept us from reading the old ones. And so in this case, somebody who wrote decades ago is definitely an older work. We reviewed a few works by her already. One of the novels I knocked out was called, it's one of her classics called The Left Hand of Darkness, which I knocked out about 5 or 6 years ago. And then I did it a couple of years later for this channel after I started. I also read one for this channel, a novel called The Lathe of Heaven, which, if you recall, was one of my 5 favorite novels I read that year. So that was a lot of fun too. That was on my bucket list. But those 2 short stories, 2 novels were the only things that I've ever read by her and reviewed for this channel. I read her fantasy stuff in Young Adult Wizard of Earthsea series when I was a kid in junior high, trying to reach out and find more fantasy after reading the Tolkien stuff in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And then my next thing I read was Anne McCaffrey's Young Adult trilogy, the Dragon Thrones, Dragon Singer, and Dragon Song trilogy. And then I went from there to the Complete Book of Swords by Fred Saberhagen, all those which I've reviewed for you. So that's kind of cool and fun stuff that happened because I liked the fantasy field that I was in, and so I decided to stay with it. And so, I knocked this out, this series, the Wizard of Earthsea series. It's also very influential on modern fantasy because it created the genre of the wizard schools at training and what that's like for these young people. that H-rated Harry Potter, and ones that copy Harry Potter have sort of followed along. So she created that genre with this. So that's pretty cool. And again, that's why I think she's very influential today, not just in science fiction with her 8 Yukos and her classic stuff, but also in fantasy too. So there you are. I'll go ahead and leave you to it. Have you read this? If so, I already told you about that. I already asked you. So thank you so much for watching this video and taking some time out of your day and investing in it. Right, we all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have an amazing day. Oh, and if you're feeling frisky, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because there's going to be a lot more of these coming. Thank you so much for your time.